This is the political brown kid here. And there was a documentary that came out on Netflix, but some time ago, about months ago, I want to say. And it's about, I guess, the Danish guy that donated his seed in order to, to various women. And the title of I think the documentary is A Thousand Children, a man with 1,000 children, or something to that effect. I was not going to watch the documentary. It just wasn't entertaining to me at the time. I didn't have an interest, and I didn't see anything that I could benefit from using it on my channel at the time. I didn't think big enough, to be honest with you. But then I actually was paying attention to the news, which I kind of really don't do too much of for the most part anymore, not for the past couple of days. But the various thing that caught my attention, and this was probably about a couple of weeks ago, was that both candidates, talking about Donald Trump and Kamala Harris, they're both in support of insurance paying for IVF, which is in vitro fertilization. And I'm going to be honest with you, I have a problem with that. I'm conflicted on it, to be honest with you, but I do have a problem with it. The only reason why is because, and please, I hope the women don't feel slighted by this, but I think that we're just in the age where we're catering everything towards women. And if it's something that a woman needs, we're just, okay, we're all for it. We'll give it because it's for a woman and it's a woman's purpose. But I'm just kind of conflicted because on one hand, we're saying, we have a bunch of children that grow up without parents, that grow up in the foster system. You have a bunch of kids that need to be adopted. And then you have a bunch of, on one end of the spectrum, and then you have on the other side of the spectrum, a bunch of people that want to have children, but they did not prioritize those children in their lifetime. They did not prioritize relationships in their lifetime. And once again, man thinks that man can play God and fix everything by tampering with people on a genetic level and on a biological level as well. And so now we're just saying that, okay, it's okay to, provide in vitro fertilization. And not only that, we're going to tell the government and the insurance companies that they have to fund it. But then yet on the other end of the spectrum, you can look and see certain healthcare issues, particularly when you look at things such as weight loss and obesity. Now they're coming out with a lot of chemicals or drugs to counter that, but they're really using diabetic medicine to do so. But on things such as liposuction, those things, they're not covered. It's like, no, you can't provide liposuction because that's a cosmetic thing when it actually helps reduce an individual in weight, but yet they'll fund in vitro fertilization. And there are other things that don't get funded by medical costs because, trust me, I've gone through, my healthcare is through my job and we have a pretty good healthcare, but there are certain things that I know a lot of people do not get covered. But I know I'm rambling. I've been talking for 3 minutes now, so I watched the documentary because what people don't realize is there's a lot of things that go on with the government that helps to socially engineer individuals. For example, the government, when you do your taxes, the whole tax structure for the most part is geared around social engineering. They'll give you tax write-offs for how many children that you have. So some people have more and more children. They want to claim this child and that child just in order to get tax breaks. The biggest one is, okay, we're going to do EVs. We're going to force individuals to buy electric vehicles, even though the infrastructure isn't built out for it. The cars are way too expensive. The technology is still too brand new. But what they'll do is they'll coerce you into buying an electric vehicle by saying, if you buy an electric vehicle, you can write off X amount of dollars from the cost of the purchase. Or if you buy solar panels and do these things, we'll give you tax breaks. And so that's kind of social engineering. And so when you look at in vitro fertilization, that's another form of social engineering. And let me explain why. You're living in a day and age where you're looking at right now where even Elon Musk And not even just Elon Musk, but a lot of individuals in the field, in the medical field, are telling people that the birth rates are on the decline. And there's a panic to get people to start reproducing for planet Earth, for the human race. You look at Japan. Japan was paying individuals or offering to pay individuals tens of thousands of dollars to come over and impregnate their women. You have all of these movements that are going on. I think that in some Asian countries, I think it was called the K2 or W4. I don't know what these movements are called, but where the women weren't sleeping with their husbands anymore. You're looking at America, where you see American women rebelling against men and, declaring their independence, and they don't need a man. You have men, this whole term, men going their own way. I just found out about that about last year. And you have all of these gender wars that are occurring throughout the species. You have women saying that they don't need a man, when technically, if they want a child, they actually do. They may not need a man as far as to be in a relationship, but they need a man because they need his seed. They need him to play his part in the reproductive process. The problem with the IVF coming into it is when you have that mindset where now you're seeing that the world is flipped, where they have a modern mindset, but they want a traditional man. They want a man to they kind of want a man with certain traditional values, but then modern values as well. When I say that, they want him to be traditionally, okay, I'll protect you. I'll dive in front of a stray bullet for you. I'll do all of these things for you. I'll die for you, put my life on the line for you. I'm going to open up doors for you, and I'm going to do all of these things. But then they want him to be modern in the sense of, okay, I'll wash the dishes. I'll let you be the boss and be the matriarch and run the household the way you want to run it. But then yet they want the man to make more money than them. So you have these mixtures of what a woman wants, and you see the men kind of pushing back. So all that's going to do, when you look at people like Ebony K. Williams, these individuals who look at men as being lesser than them, but yet they hold out as long as they can to find the perfect man. And then they get to the 40s and then they say, okay, well, I'll just freeze my eggs and I'll just have a baby, because they know that the government is going to provide them with these services. Or some people like Ebony K. Williams, they can just afford to do so. They have the financial means to say, I don't need to have a spouse or a partner at this point in my life, and I'll just have a child on my own. But we make these sperm banks readily available to people, and what it's doing is convincing individuals to no longer partner up and try to form relationships with one another, but to just get into these casual flings. So that's my big problem with this whole IVF and wanting to pay for it, because all that's going to do is it's going to open up the doors to women of all socioeconomic brackets to say, I don't need to be with a man. I'm just going to go ahead and just have a child on my own. Now, when you watch this documentary, and then also the problem with, because this documentary points out another issue with in vitro fertilization, and that is what I'm going to call the Gattaca effect. Now, what do I mean by the Gattaca effect? Well, if you've ever seen the movie Gattaca, and I recommend that people watch it, Ethan Hawke was in there, Uma Thurman was in there. I forget the English guy. He was pretty popular at one time. He was in the movie, but I don't know his name. I do apologize for not knowing his name, but the movie Gattaca, it's out there. If you can look at it on demand, it's probably even online somewhere. The movie was basically a futuristic look at how regular humans, people born naturally, were undesirable individuals. And the way that they were pushing was for when individuals are about to have a child, their DNA is tampered with in order to make them these superior human beings. So I'll just give you a high-level overview of what the movie is about. Try not to give away spoiler alerts, but Ethan Hawke is a character. He was born from poor means, and he was born through a natural birth. So therefore, his genetics weren't perfect, meaning he had, I think, when they did his blood work, they could tell that he had, I guess his heart wasn't great, and it was estimated that he was going to pass away in his 50s or 40s or something to that effect. He didn't have great eyesight because he needed glasses. It was all of these various things, and that just made him not an elite individual, and all he could do was hold a janitorial job. Whereas the individuals who had their DNAs tampered with, they had all of those impurities removed out. They could pick their eye colors, so forth, so forth. They were these genetically superior human beings. And when you look at in vitro fertilization, that is where we're moving to. We're moving towards a Gattaca type of society. And then also you're looking towards other things too. This is going to be gene selection and basically wiping out the genetics of a lot of individuals on planet Earth, particularly men. I'm not talking about women, because once again, women are the ones who get to choose. These sperm banks were built for them. So if you watch the documentary, The Man with 1,000 Children, and I'm going to cover just some key points in here. I've had some things that I'm taking off that I'm going to show. But mind you, I don't know if this stuff is copyrighted or not, so I'm going to just show still frames, and I'm going to play some of the audio from the show, because I really want you to sink in what's going on. Basically, to give you the gist of it, all of this one man, and mind you, he's a Aryan. He's blonde. He has milky white skin, blonde hair, blue eyes. And I keep telling people, when you look at the standard for white beauty, that is the standard. Blonde hair, blue eyes, milky white skin. Black people's standard of beauty is a light-skinned exotic person. That's what it is. You have to be light-skinned. They don't like their beauty standard. They don't like brown skin, dark skin. You hear a lot of people now, that's kind of like the flavor now, but that's not overall. When you look throughout the world, that's not the overall standard. For black people don't look at it and say, I want a dark person with natural hair, with this kind of look, with this kind of nose, with this kind of lips. They do not. They go for the more European look. We're going to come back to all of this, because this is going to play a part when women start going to these sperm banks and what they choose. Keep in mind what Debrat did. She did not choose a black person because she said they did not look good. Because now, once again, when women are making selections, now that women have independence, they're making their own money, they can create their own resources for themselves, women's selections have shifted from, yeah, I take his looks into consideration, but I also take into consideration his personality. I also take into consideration his ability to provide, what kind of job he does. I take into consideration what kind of man he is. Is he a great person? Women used to take the whole total package into consideration. Now in the dating market, women just care about, is he fine? That's all they care about. And when Debrat selected her baby through IVF, once again, it was not about, okay, what is his resume? What does it look like? What does his psychological thing? What is his personality? Like, what am I reading? And number one, you're not going to be able to get all of that through reading anyway. And that's also the other problem with the IVF thing. And I'll just bring that up right up front. It's kind of like dating online. When you meet someone in person, women are more likely to find you attractive when you meet them in person than they are flipping through pictures online. Because once again, they get to take into consideration your personality, your energy, your look, your height, your physique. They get to, and then also too, if they've known you for a little bit, they can see, your mannerisms. They can tell intellectually how you are. And that's how some women gravitate towards you. But online, the only thing they can go off of is he fine? Does he have a nice body? Same thing when we're going to the IVF. Are they really reading and saying, oh, this guy is mentally superior. He has such a brilliant mind. When they're in the IVF office, they're looking at photos. And they're they're eliminating a lot of people off of their look, and they're not even reading the bios. It's kind of what you do online. So once again, 80 most women find 80% of men ugly and only 20% to be beautiful, such as the guy on the show. Once again, he's an Aryan. He proudly boasted he's a Viking. He has the Viking with that Nordic look. And you had hundreds of women on all 7 continents, even Africa, choosing this man's seed to impregnate them. And you had a bunch of women over in his home country. I think it was, I don't know where Danish is. He's Danish, but whatever country he was in, you had a bunch of women selecting him based just off of his looks. And these women weren't even, I hate to say that these women weren't attractive. I should not say that. But when you look at them on a beauty scale, they're not beauty queens. But yet they're saying he looks like he could be the father of my child. And that yet they're putting down other men that probably more so fit into their class of the type of guy that they could get for a long-term relationship. But anyway, this is what I want to do. I've talked long enough, but I had to really get this out there because honestly, this kind of opened up so many eyes. And what the most concerning thing to me, particularly for Black people, is there's a sperm bank in Kenya that's just requesting European male sperm. And they want to bring European genetics into Africa. And there were guys, and I'm going to show it to you so you guys can see this. If you have not seen this documentary, it's a 3-part documentary. It wasn't long. The first 2 parts were 30 minutes each, 30-something minutes. The last part was 40 minutes. I didn't know why they didn't just make this one big movie, but they did it in 3 parts. And the one guy is bragging, saying that he wants to bleach Africa. And then the other one was saying they want my mighty white seed. So without further ado, I'm just going to play a few of these clips and just kind of respond to them. But if you want to check out the entire movie, if you have a Netflix account, go to Netflix and just type in 1000 and it'll pop up The Man with 1,000 Children. So let's start playing these clips one by one. Here we go.
The first donor we found was Leon. He was 35 with a good set of brains, and that he had a job as a financial advisor at a big bank, and that he's sympathetic and kind. And when I met him, I was horrified. He didn't look like a banker. He didn't look like somebody who has a good sets of brains, and he didn't have any hair on his whole body. And then he had a scar from his left ear to his right ear on the back of his head. So I saw the scar and I was like, what is wrong with this guy? And I thought, no, not with you. Not with your genes. You're not gonna procreate with my genes. No, we're not gonna do that. And I found another guy, 29, good looking, good set of hairs, good set of brains, a teacher. And I thought, okay, it's worth to message this guy again. In the first email he sent pictures of himself, not baby pictures, but actual pictures of how he looked just now. It is with his hair all curled up and pretty and nice, and looked in the camera, and it was like a day and night difference between the first one and that one. He made a connection with you.
Maarten was attracting because he was an artist. He likes music, playing music, making music. He had curly hair. That was very nice. That were points that I really liked. And then I responded on his profile.
So, as you can see, she said that she met up with the one guy initially, and I don't know if I put his picture in. I'm going to try to put the first guy's picture in there as well. And you can see that she just like, no, not with your genes. Notice. And you see how she looks. I want y'all to pay attention to how she looks as well. And this is not to put anyone down, but once again, It's amazing how we can judge other individuals as being attractive or not attractive, yet she feels as though she has the right to say, my genes are better than your genes are worth throwing away. You're no good. Your genes are bad. And then yet now she sees this other guy, and now it's like, oh my God, I automatically built a connection. She didn't build a connection with him. It's just that her heart is racing. She sees something that she likes, and just when you see, just as you see it out in the streets, women will throw away all logic and all requirements for the right individual. She sees this individual, and it's like, I made a connection. It's like he made a connection with me. How? He just walked into the room, or he just showed you some pictures. He didn't even walk in the room yet. He just showed you some pictures. And automatically you think that you have a connection with him. No, you don't have a connection with him. You're just having infatuation because you see something that you like. Thus, this is what we call pretty privilege, right? People fail to take into consideration. People always want to downplay that, your looks don't account for anything, but they account for everything. They account for the way people treat you in life, because trust me, there's a big difference. When I was skinnier, there was a big difference between how I was treated, particularly by the opposite sex, than the way I'm treated now that I've gotten bigger. And now that I'm getting back smaller, I can see it as more and more I get into shape. I can see the difference in the type of women that are willing to match with me and or send me likes as well. But once again, I just wanted to highlight this point of here you have this woman who's probably just an average looking woman. I'm not trying to say she's horrible looking, but I don't think that she has the right to judge the first individual. And a scar being on this person's back of the head, that probably wasn't a genetic scar. It could have been a scar that individual received throughout their lifetime. So let's continue to go forward with this. Let's continue with some more clips.
We texted. He was so easy to talk to. Just a guy next door, and he could be a friend. I wasn't looking for looks. I wanted to have a donor who have the best interest for the donor child. So it felt really good. I was watching people coming and going, and every man that came around the corner, I was asking myself, well, is that him? And yes, that's him. Okay, that's a good looking guy. Jeez. Well, yeah, he could be the father of my child.
He looked exactly like he did in the pictures. I thought he was an attractive guy. He had curly hair, he had bright blue eyes, good set of teeth. He looked good.
When he came to my place to donate, he offered me the opportunity to conceive in a natural way by having sex. When we talked about it, it made sense that it would be the most effective way to conceive. And he told me it's okay, that he wouldn't tell anyone else, and it just between us, and that's it. And then finally I decided to try it in a natural way.
So here's another woman. Once again, everybody loves Jonathan. Everyone loves Jonathan. That's why he has 1,000 children. He was being requested, like I told you, he's in one country. He was being requested in the UK, Canada, I think the United States. He went over to Africa. But he was mainly populating in the area that he's from. I don't know where, I'm not a geography person, but wherever his country was. And you can see this one woman right here. She was just like, okay, he looks so good, I'm going to let him conceive the natural way. He doesn't have to, put it in a cup. He can put it right inside of me, and we can do it the natural way, because she wants to experience all of that long, flowing blonde hair and those beautiful blue eyes staring at her, in an intimate manner. She was willing to do that. Mind you, she doesn't know this guy. And I want other people to realize this. If you haven't watched this documentary, this isn't even the IVF clinic. He's not even going through. I'm going to give a spoiler alert. He was donating to an IVF, which is an in vitro fertilization clinic. He was donating his seed to the clinic, but he signed an agreement basically stating he would not donate any other place. He was going to exclusively donate to this one place. And and that's what he was going to do. But he was doing his own thing. In addition to putting his seed in this one IVF place, he was going to multiple IVF places and donating. And there are a lot of other men doing the same thing. But in addition to doing that, he was donating freelance on the side. There's some website that's set up. This is not regulated by any industry. And if people go on that website and say, hey, look, I want to request to have a baby with you, they can go to his house. He'll either, put it in a cup, or he offers to have, intercourse the right way and inject his thing into her female part and conceive naturally. Mind you, the reason why I'm bringing that up is because of this. None of these women know this man. All they know is a profile. And they're willing to have his child based on his look. They don't know if this man has any disease. They don't know his mental history of his family, his genetic history of his family. All they see is a look, and they're willing to say, that's what I want. And this is why I'm going back to the whole Gattaca thing, and I'm going to bring it full circle and how this is really going to impact Black people. This is really going to impact you, Black man, because you're done. You're done. And I'm going to explain why. And you already know the reason why. Because on the Pop the Balloon show, there was a African woman who turned down an African man because she said he looked too African. I don't make this up. Go look at the balloon pops. There was one African. She said she was from East Africa and West Africa. I think from Ghana and Nigeria. And she turned down this one African guy. I think he was from Kenya because she said he looked too African. What do we do here in the United States? She said she likes more United States. She said she likes Americanized looking Black men. And that means basically a Black man who's pretty much has had some kind of, he's a mongrel. Because all Black men and women, if you're a foundational Black American, I just learned that word. I really don't like it, but it is, I guess it's the best way to describe it because that's what the word people are using today. So I really try to stay away from that word. But when you look at foundational Black Americans, every Black American, if you have Black American lineage, you are pretty much a mongrel. At some point in time, your blood was diluted with white blood. Thus, that's why you have the mixtures of Blacks that we have in this country, the way we look today. So she likes more of an Americanized Black person. Interesting that she would say that. And when you look at Black Americans, we like more of a lighter complected Black person. It goes deeper and deeper. When you look at a Black person in America, all they want is an exotic looking Black person. They just want somebody who's light skinned or somebody with pretty hair, somebody with green eyes, somebody with a thin nose. They want some European features. I'm not making this up. Even you see a lot of women go on the balloon pop show. A lot of women talk about they want a man that's dark. Oh, I like a dark man. I like a chocolate man. But notice that chocolate man doesn't have a few things. That if he's chocolate, he has a nice wavy hair. He has he has a pretty decent grade. It's nice, and not to say that it's straight, but he can hook up some waves, and he has a thin nose. They're not going to go for a dark man with a big nose, an African nose. They're not going to do it. I'm telling you. So that's why I say you're cooked, because when women start going to these sperm banks and they start selecting, once again, it's going to be similar to the dating apps where only the top 10% of men are going to be chosen by all of the women. The same thing all of these women were doing at this sperm bank. All of the women he has over 1,000 kids. So you can probably say maybe about 500, 400 women all selected him. They were even selecting him over in the UK and having his seed shipped to the UK because you can do that. So once again, if you're giving women access to a database and saying you can pick from any type of sperm that you want from around the world, and all they see are pictures. All they're going to do is put the filter on the same way these women did in this movie. You would have to go watch it. They're going to just start filtering and just start looking at looks, and then they're going to narrow it down to the prettiest men. And this industry is not as regulated as you think. They explain that in the documentary. And it also, too, how can you control someone, how they put their seed out into the world? You know, and I'm going to kind of talk about that as well, because this also, too, goes to my body, my choice. And we were going to talk about, you know, them trying to stop him from procreating once they found out how many kids he actually had. But now it goes into infringing on his rights as a human being because he wants to populate the earth with his seed as much as possible. Well, they want to shut him down from doing what he's doing. However, they're telling women that it's their body, their choice, and that we create laws to protect a woman's right, but we're not protecting his right to populate the earth with as many kids as he wants. Now, once again, I'm not in favor, to be honest with you, of him populating the earth, because I can see genetically it's going to wipe out a lot of people's genes, possibly mine. But if we're going to say for one class of individuals, for females, that they have the right to do whatever they want to do with impunity, why are we infringing on this man's right to do the opposite, which is populate the earth with his seed as much as possible? It's not his fault that he continually gets picked by a bunch of women. It's also, you have to put the blame on these other individuals saying, you're the ones selecting this man. Everybody wants him. So, but let's keep going.
I work at a preschool as a teacher, and my colleague used a donor as well. And she asked me, do you know who your donor is? And I said, yes, of course I know who my donor is. And, where does he come from? Well, he's coming from Den Haag. And then I saw her face like going, oh. And I asked, oh, what do you mean? Well, my donor is coming from Den Haag as well. She said, what is his name? And I said, Jonathan. And then we were like on the hallway at work. I think we laughed. And I remember her telling me, well, in that case, our kids will know each other and they will grow up as siblings, half siblings. And we were like, oh, well, that would be great, a little family. A couple of years later, I found out that another colleague who had a daughter, she said, hey, I think the girls look alike. The children are blonde, and you see the eyebrows are the same, and the nose and the ears. That's the point we found out. We both used Jonathan as well. It's also a classmate of my niece who called me a few years later telling me she has a son. It was also a friend of my first boyfriend who's telling me she has a son. It's also somebody from my birth town who says she has a child. And then you think, if there are so many connections in my direct environment, how many are there?
We started talking about having another family member.
And I said to Natalie, I only want a kid if it's from that donor.
Maybe we could ask Jonathan again if he is willing to donate.
I made a text. Okay, hi Jonathan, we want a second child. Do you want to help us again?
There were hundreds of donors that came up. Each donor used childhood photos in their profiles, and obviously aliases that aren't their real names. She really wanted someone that looked like me, and I'm saying, okay, well, let's shortlist that then. So we want someone who's blonde. We had a selection of 3 donors, and then we narrowed it down to 1, and that was donor Ruud from the Netherlands. He had the most kindest eyes, and he just really seemed like he was a really beautiful little boy. Cryle stated that it was fine to import donor Ruud's sperm into Australia.
I guess fearful for the children.
couple of months later, we organized a siblings day, and then it became very real. My daughter knows a lot of brothers, and she really liked one of them. Because they have the same interests, they have the same humor, they have the same little silly things. So they really connect. And my daughter was saying, hey, I really like him. I was like, well, that's not an option. He's your half brother. But I really, really like him. Maybe I'm in love with him. So that's a big problem. And she was only 10 or 11.
These connections with the children are instant. It's so rare to see.
They call it the Luke and Leah complex because of the movie Star Wars. Children who haven't been brought up together are more likely to get attracted to each other because they see some familiarities in the face of the sibling.
But just imagine we're 10 years further. They're going to university. They're meeting someone that they feel this connection with. And
You think it's love?
then they can think it's love. And then you can have incestuous children.
I have to teach her to always ask to everybody who she meets, are you from a donor?
Okay, so here you have, now you have these women, they want additional children. Now, in a way, I understand why they went back to Jonathan to have their second child. So 3 of the women being interviewed here, they want another child to add to their family. And I think it's 3 or 2. And they want to go back and check out Jonathan because I get it. You want your children to have the same blood, to have the same, so they can more or less likely look alike, and you can give them the same genetics as much as possible. But here's where the problem comes in for me. Once again, they're not going through the sperm donors. They're going through some website that they found. This isn't regulated industry. They're just going and they found him randomly online and they're using him. Now you'll see the introduction of more women. So now you see these women, because he's in Dunhaig. I guess that's how you said it. But now you see that there's a lesbian couple in Australia that now want him. And once again, what did I tell y'all? When everything's online, all you have to do, just like with a dating app, you can filter on what type of man you want. Blonde hair, blue eyes, 6 feet tall. When you start putting relationships and start narrowing down love and procreation to an algorithm, you're in for a big, big surprise. Because once again, everybody's going to want the same person. If you leave it up to men to say, okay, what kind of woman do you want? Everybody's going to click on Halle Berry. Everyone's going to click on a certain type of woman. And it's going to leave other women out of the genetic pool so that they can't pass along their genetics. If the shoe was reversed, I'm just kind of giving you if the shoe was reversed and men was making a selection. When you start narrowing things down to just swipes and filters, where you can filter on the type of individual you want, like in the movie Gattaca, the gene selection occurs. Now you can start saying, this individual is undesirable and we only want the top 10%. So the top 10% of men will be repopulating the earth. And thus you're going to run into the probability, as was introduced right here in this clip here, in this collection of clips that I put together, you're going to start introducing the potential for incest. So now you already see that Jonathan is so popular in the country where he's at. I don't even know where they're from, but he's so popular. This woman's co-worker also selected him. And mind you, he doesn't even live in their area. He's flying in just to be their donor. And so now all of these women are selecting the same man. Now you see that you have all of these children. So now, as the documentary goes on, he's up to like 15, 20, and 30 children in one particular area. So the solution that they have to come up with is, she's telling her daughter that when you go through life, before you even select a mate, before you even get to know a man and become attracted to that person, you have to ask that person, are you, were you born from a sperm donor? What kind of life do you have to live growing up, having to continually ask individuals before you get with them, who your parents are? Because you don't know your own father, because you were born through IVF. This is the world that it's going to come to. And so now you also see the introduction where she's saying they introduced this term called the not the Han, but the Luke and Leia effect, which means that brothers and sisters, as she explained it in the documentary, if you ever seen Star Wars, you get it. Because in Star Wars, Luke Skywalker and Princess Leia didn't know that they were brothers and sisters because they were raised on two separate planets. But when they finally met, they had this kind of connection and attraction to one another. And so they kind of kissed. They had this little moment of incest, a little slight incest. And then they realized that they were brothers and sisters. And she goes off with Han Solo anyway. And then Luke goes on his mission. But basically, they're saying that the Luke and Leia effect is, because individuals share the same blood, if you have the same parents, sometimes if, genetics pass on, you kind of adapt your parents' interests. If your parent is artsy, your kids may be artsy. If you have one parent that's humorous and, funny, you take on these particular traits. So if these kids are sharing if they have those same commonalities, they're going to instantly connect with one another. And then you're going to start bonding, and then you're going to look also too and see a familiar face. When you look at that other individual, you're going to see yourself in that individual subconsciously, and the attraction is just going to be there. And as you can see, her 10-year-old daughter has already fallen in love with her half brother. And now you have this mother having to coerce and shut this down. And you're going to have these kids being raised in separate areas, and they're liking one another. This is very deep. So let's just continue.
And you hear the worries of all those moms for the future, for the kids. They trusted this man.
This person is half our son, and what else was there about Jonathan that we didn't know? Okay.
I know Jonathan personally. We are in daily contact. He confides in me and he trusts me. I tried to have a baby with Jonathan for 6 months. I got to know him on the internet. He introduced himself, and I think 2 weeks later, when I ovulated, he was there. When he came, I was thinking, wow, perfect skin, good body, blonde hair, blue eyes, and I'm ready to have beautiful babies. And I said, okay, come to the bedroom, let's do it in a natural way. And he didn't hesitate. And every time when he came, I gave him chocolate milk with cookies because he was still so young. I found it adorable.
Is there an age gap between the two of you?
Yes. Which was fine by me.
Many moms confronted him, asking him to stop. And he was just not listening.
Okay. See, let me just start with the last woman that we just heard from. This woman is, she looks to be at least 15 years older than Jonathan. She's about 15 years older than Jonathan. Now, a lot of people call men predators when men do this type of thing, but they don't look at women as being predators in this regard. It's the double standard once again. Here this woman is, and she's talking about she's giving him milk and cookies. She was excited to see him. As you can hear her talk, she is oogling over Jonathan. She's like, I am ready to have beautiful babies. This man is breathtaking. So it just goes to show you, when you are an attractive person, all logic goes out the door for the other individual, and you can do whatever you want to that other individual. They will put up with as much as you can dish out. Here she is having chocolate milk and chocolate chip cookies prepared for him every time he comes. She's trying to. This isn't just a wham bam. This isn't a business transaction. You give me this baby. I don't know what he's getting from her. It didn't seem like he was getting paid at all. I didn't hear anything about money or transactions occurring. He was just doing the do. But every time she finds out that he's coming, it's almost like, let me light the candles. If you find out that a fine woman is coming over your house, you're going to clean up, you're going to light some candles. And if you notice she likes a certain particular drink, you're going to have that drink on hand. If she likes a certain dessert or food, you're going to have that. It's called courting an individual. And she's basically courting Jonathan with the milk and cookies. She can give y'all whatever bullcrap that she wants to give you, but this is exactly what she's doing. And she has zero shame about it. She's like, yeah, I know that there's an age difference. I don't care, because he's that fine. And what I'm telling you, when you have pretty privilege or handsome privilege in his case, you can do whatever it is that you want. Now let's get back to, because you can see the women from Australia in this clip, and they're even going back to the other woman in this clip. None of these women know him. Now they're heartbroken because they're finding out that he has donated far more, or he has procreated more children than they thought that he did. I think he was up to 50 to 100 at this point in time. And they're saying that them and a few other women want him to stop. Now, this is why I go into the thought of his body, his choice. Unfortunately, once again, I am in no way in approval of any of this behavior. I don't approve of, I'm telling you, what Cam Newton does, it's despicable. What Nick Cannon does is probably even more despicable than Cam Newton, in my personal opinion, because I think that basically Nick Cannon just finds a bunch of Proctors and Savoys, and he's just only procreating with Proctors and Savoys. He has a colorism thing going on with him. And Cam Newton probably does as well. But you can see from this documentary, white men are doing the same thing. They're just going to sperm banks and putting as much of their seed out there as possible. And people are eating it up. And so now these women are in an uproar, wanting him and telling him that he needs to stop. And they're saying he's not listening. But at the same time, that it's kind of similar to a man telling a woman to stop having, going to the clinic and terminating pregnancies, and her not listening. And, does he have the right to tell her to stop? No, it's her body, her choice, right? So why is it that they have the right to tell him to stop doing what he's doing? Once again, I'm not in the business of agreeing, where I do not agree or condone with what he is doing. And I don't condone with what a lot of women do with their bodies. But at the same time, if the earth and if our governing bodies are going to allow one thing to occur, then they have to be consistent. That's just my pure philosophy on it. But let's just continue.
For the amount of offspring that one donor can have. And so what ultimately ends up happening is that a really popular donor will meet that national limit, and then a place like Cryos will go and sell it to a different country. And then it will get maxed out there, and then he'll get sold to country after country after country. And that is just one sperm bank, and we know that he was in at least 11 sperm banks. Even though they sign something that says that they're not donating elsewhere, there's nothing to enforce it, because it's just a guideline and a recommendation. And that's the problem. When you're breeding puppies or livestock and cattle, that is more regulated than the fertility industry and sperm donation. We know that this is morally wrong, but just because it's morally wrong doesn't make it illegal.
And you see, and I actually agree with what this woman is saying. She's bringing up two good points. And I'm actually glad that I did watch this documentary, like I said, because I was only looking at it from a very narrow-minded focus. And then I looked at the impact to the world, the elimination of a lot of individuals' genetics and genes, because you're going to have pretty selection, and it's just really going to be the top 10% of men whose genes are going to survive. And then particularly when you look at Black people, your genetics are really not going to survive because African women are now chasing after colorism and chasing after white men. Black women are chasing after white men. No one's finding Black white men, his genes or looks have always been the predominant or the de facto look and the beauty standard across the globe. It just is the European look. That, you can talk to all of these other guys in this space talking about there's no such thing as colorism, there's no such thing as this, that, or the third, but they are lying to you. Those men are lying to you. The fact of the matter is European genes are the prevailing gene because that's what kind of you've been taught. But I don't even think at this point it's really about, what you've been subliminally taught. I think that now people are just gravitating towards that look and towards those genes. The other thing that she brings up, which is interesting too, is just the process, just how unregulated this process is. Because if anyone is familiar, like when you're in the dog breeding business, you're trying to keep track of, for the most part, they try to keep track of it, especially if your dog is going to be AKC registered, track of who the father is, who the mother is. I don't want to use the term that, you have the stud and the bee, you have all of that. I'm not very familiar with, I know people who did used to breed dogs at one point in time, but those individuals you're trying to track because you don't want to dilute or cross genes with your dogs when you're in the mating process as well. So in this instance, how come this industry is not as regulated? How come they can't keep a better track and have an international database that cross checks and determine and can understand, can monitor and manage with how many how much or how many times one individual can spread their seed on the earth? That's what I'm basically trying to say. They don't have anything that regulates that from what this individual is saying. And that is very scary because you're going to find out later on, like I told you, this individual is able to donate and create it up to, they said he has between 1,000 and 3,000 offspring on this planet. And he's not the only man doing it. I told you, you're going to see later on that there's other men doing the same thing. So let's continue.
We stumbled on a Facebook group, which is about donors in Kenya.
And there's a doctor looking for European sperm donors. 2-week vacation, flight, stay in a hotel, food, all paid for by the clinic.
It raised some alarm bells, like he couldn't be possibly donating just before a court case to stop him, right? Or could he?
Mary also wants a baby. Mary also very interested. Also, right? You also want sperm donation. Also interested.
These mass donors, they show up how many children they have.
This would probably be 42 or 43. Like Superman.
Like Brazil right now is a hot spot. Certain parts of Asia. In Kenya, there's huge demand for sperm. And so the quickest way to fill up those sperm banks so they're not importing that sperm is to get these serial donors over there. And when you read the messages between my source and these donors, it all becomes clear. Anthony said that the clinic had flown him over, paid for his flight, his hotel, and his entire stay until he donated 500 straws. And those vials would fill up the tank.
What Anthony said was that he was actually there being milked as a cow. And that the goal of the clinic is to make 200 babies a year.
With his sperm.
With his sperm.
All these serial sperm donors have deemed Kenya the new promised land. And then Anthony says he wants to bleach Africa. It's horrifically racist. It is so beyond sick.
So yeah, this is the final clip right here, and this is the part that I'm kind of want to focus on. This is why I was talking about just the elimination or eradication of Black individuals. Now, as you can see, this European or this Nordic god is these women are kind of put the title on him. They haven't explicitly said that, but that's basically what they're saying because they've fondled over him and he's been able to produce so many children. He's in high demand as far as for to be to conceive with. Now they're going over to Africa because they're saying that there's a high demand for sperm in Africa. This is coming from this individual. The woman that's actually talking, she actually is a product of in vitro fertilization, and I think that she was I don't know if it's her exactly, but I think that she was the one who the doctor actually used his it was through IVF fraud where the donor was supposed to be one particular individual, but the doctor was actually using his sperm in order to, and impregnated her mother with it. And that's also the other thing too. Who's like, how is this industry regulated? How is a doctor committing fraud in populating the earth with his seed? But now they've moved over to Africa. And as you can see, I'm putting in still shots in this frame for copyright purposes. But as you can see, or if you can't, this sperm bank in Kenya is only asking for European donors. They're only asking for white donors. Trust me, when they say European, they don't mean some Black person from Europe. They want European donors over in Kenya. Why would you say that you want European donors in Kenya? Possibly is it because the women there want white men? As you can see from the video, you have one Black woman sitting there. I don't know if they're in Kenya, but they're in some part of Africa. And the white guy's sitting there patting her like, yeah, she wants a baby. She wants a baby. You mean to tell me this woman can't find anybody over in Kenya to impregnate her? Mind you, these aren't men, and you have to look at it too from this perspective. You have to understand this. These aren't men that these women are looking to stay with. I could see if these women were like, if you just had a preconceived notion that white men treat you better and they're richer, and they're going to be able to support me and provide for me. And, if he marries me, I'm going to move into a nice house and I'm not going to be in the ghetto. I can understand if you have that preconceived notion. I'm not saying I agree with it, but I'm saying I can understand if a woman just assumes that a white man is richer and he's going to provide her with a better life. But these women aren't. You got to understand, this is an in vitro fertilization clinic. You're not going to be married to this guy. You're not going to see this guy anymore. You're just using his seed. So obviously, you're not wanting him for provision, protection, or anything, or pure love. You just want a white baby. You just want a baby that's white because you obviously look at yourself and you see yourself as not being pretty. You see yourself as being aesthetically inferior, and you want to create and have a mixed race baby that is quote unquote pretty. I keep telling y'all, Black people's problem has never been racism. It has been a lack of power, either perceived power or actual power. And in this case, you feel as though your looks are inferior to white looks. And as you can see in this video too, and you heard it from her mouth, this individual named Anthony, he's another serial donor that they say he's going to be producing 200 offspring a year in Africa. Just in Kenya alone, he's just going to be producing 200 kids per year. Basically, he's saying, I'm going to bleach Africa. That is what he said. I am going to bleach Africa. So what does that mean, people? And then also, if you see at the end, I put in the end, they put it not in the credits, but there's just some end statements they have rolling, before the movie ended, is that he basically says, I want to put my glorious and mighty white seed. I want to spread my glorious and mighty white seed. These are what you would call racist statements. This is what you call a superiority complex. I go back to the awful individual Henry Louis Gates. I do not like Henry Louis Gates. I can go into a whole conversation why Henry Louis Gates is a Sambo. He truly is a Sambo. And I'll explain to you why that is in another video, or if you just hit me up and ask me, I will tell you. But he does not stand on principle. He does not stand on principle at all. But he is very knowledgeable when it comes to certain topics. And he did a series on PBS, and one of those series was Brazil, a Racial Paradise. And he explained what the term blanqueamiento meant. It's called the whitening. It's bleaching. It's what the white people did that were in power in Brazil when the black slaves were freed. What they did was they said, we want to breed out all of these black people. We have to breed them out. They're here. We can't just terminate them. We can't just exterminate them. We would look bad. So what did they do? They basically said, we'll breed them out. Similar to what you heard in the movie. If you ever seen that movie with Mel Gibson, Braveheart, with the Scottish guy or the king said about the Scottish people, he was like, the problem with Scotland is full of Scots. And he said, what we got to do is breed them out. And his way of dealing with it was in the movie, I'm basically explaining in the movie, he said, we're going to have prima nocta. I don't know what that means. I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly. So basically, they were going to allow the European king to sleep with any Scottish man who got married. He had first rights to the woman's wife to hopefully breed out the Scots. That's what they did in Brazil. According to Henry Louis Gates. I'm just going off according to Henry Louis Gates. He's the scholar. But he basically had another black female in the video who basically broke it down. And they basically said that what the Europeans did, what the Caucasians did, was they brought in a bunch of Europeans from, I think, Spain and Portugal and a whole bunch of other places. They brought them down to Brazil to work and told them, you have to come alone, don't bring your wives, because they know once you get down here, you're going to have needs, you're going to need to release. And they bred with the slaves and they produce lighter and lighter children. And that's why the Brazilians look the way they look today. So what do you think they're going to do in Africa? They're doing the same thing. These women, you're going to get lighter and lighter. You're just going to have a whole bunch of lighter and lighter people. You already know Africans don't consider mixed people to be black. They call them coloreds. You have the white race, the black race, and you have coloreds. You're just going to create further and further confusion of what is going on. You're going to create more and more people that don't want to identify as being black. You're going to have ignorant black people wanting to kick these black people out the race because they don't have two black parents, which you hear foolish talk going on in the United States. They don't want to claim, quote unquote, mixed people as black. And we always allow white people to dictate the narrative. And when you start allowing them to populate your last haven of black people, which is the continent of Africa, and all of the countries over there, whether it's Kenya, Nairobi, Cameroon, Ghana, Tanzania, Seychelles, Cape Verde, wherever you're talking about, Mozambique, Botswana, I don't know. But once you get their foot in the door and you start allowing this is going to be the result where you're going to have the black genes not being desired. Look at what I'm telling y'all, go read what the brat said. She said that there weren't that many black sperm donors because, we don't go to sperm banks. Black people don't go to sperm banks all like that and donate. And then she was like, and the black sperm that we had to choose from, the guys were ugly. That she chose her baby off of looks. And when you start having a whole bunch of black women now starting to say, okay, I want to go to a sperm bank, I can just party my tail off because once again, I told y'all about social engineering. So now if they're like, oh girl, I can have a baby in my 40s. Now, we have free, my health insurance is going to pay for it. What does that incentivize any woman to get married in their 20s or even in their 30s? The women are just going to say, hey, while I still look young and I'm still fine, I'm still going to party and I'm still going to do what I do out here in the streets. And then once I turn 42, and so long as you don't have certain health conditions, I think like required. You can't have fibroids. You can't have certain other things. I don't know what the whole requirements is. You have to look it up on IVF, research IVF. But as long as you're in your 40s and you're relatively healthy, especially with your female parts, they will impregnate you. So what does that incentivize any woman to want to, number one, try to build a relationship with a man, especially when you hear women say, I don't need a man, I'm more educated than him, I make more money than him, I have more stuff than him, I don't need a man. And now I can just go to the sperm bank and get a man's sperm, even though they don't even look at it, they're not even making the connection that I need a man to have this baby, because now if there's just a whole bunch of sperm at the sperm bank, they're just going to it like it's the shopping mall, like they're going to the store buying some lip gloss. And all they have to do is go onto a website, go onto an IVF website, filter what type of man they want, whether I just want a chocolate man who's 6'2", muscles, but he got to have a thin nose, and he got to have nice lips, and he got to have dreamy eyes. When you have women starting to make these type of selections, once again, you're getting into the world of Gattaca. You're wiping out a whole bunch of other men's genetics, and you're all doing it for free because the health insurance companies are going to pay for it, according to Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. They're both on board with this, people. There's not going to be any incentivization for people to have relationships anymore. So that's my big worry with this whole thing. Like I said, I wasn't going to watch this documentary, but once I heard the news about the IVF thing from Donald Trump and from Kamala Harris and what their position was on it, then I just went back and revisited the documentary because I didn't have anything else to do. And I said, wow, this kind of did fit, so maybe I do need to do this. So I know this video was relatively long, but I just wanted to put that out there. So I'd like to hear your thoughts on it. Put your thoughts and comments in the comment section. Definitely hit the like and subscribe. Once again, this is the Political Brown Kid. I'm out of here.